We got a new guest on the podcast this time. We got Matt Campbell here from the big bad streets of Strabane. Currently living up north, aren't you, near Newcastle, aren't you?
Newcastle, aye.
Hi, Matt, just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your what you do and your history of fitness.
So, just basically PT. Started now about must be 3-4 years. Since I've been to uni, like, so I've done my undergrad degree and I've done most recently my masters in strength and conditioning. Since I came over here to Newcastle in September, I got a job as a PT and in a health club, and then most recently I started working with Newcastle Thunder, which is a rugby team, working with the academy team, doing some SEC work with them as well. So
brilliant,
pretty good. And most recently I went more online with the lockdowns and all the rest. So
how have you been getting on with the lockdowns? Because from what I see on, especially in your Insta and stuff, you do a lot of like online programming for people, nutrition and so on, and a lot of it's mixed. You know, you're a lot in some in muscle building and some in fat loss and some in both, obviously. But how's that all going?
It's quite.
Your camera disappeared there, Matt.
Sorry, I just had a caller. Like, my client base is quite broad, I would say. I literally could have someone, a 40-year-old female who wants to lose some weight, or I could have a 17-year-old lad who wants to put on some size for sport, or just to look good. And then I actually only started really doing online more at the start of the very first lockdown. So it's kind of all new to me at the start, but it's become a lot more. I do a lot more of my work now online than I do in person. Obviously,
you're not allowed to go in person.
There's no other choice really. But this most recent lockdown, I started doing online classes as well. So
right,
it's been quite challenging for myself. I'm not gonna lie, because you think, oh, it's gonna be easy to do it, but then you have to sometimes bust it on, and then you have to talk through it, and it's no joke. Like,
George is in that same situation at the minute, and I don't know if Jack does the classes, but George does. Like, I catch him every so often when I go to our gym, and he's in there doing his Zoom sessions, and he's there dying in front of the camera, and then also trying to talk. And in the first lockdown that we had, I mean, what was the class you doing? Kettlebell class, and he smashed himself.
I'm banded. Yeah, I've found a way of getting around that this time though. So I've got a kettlebell that's basically hollow.
Yeah. Pulled up with water.
So, I'm there like, whoa, yeah, I'm feeling this as well. And really, I'm just moving from A to B without any weight. It's great.
Wow. And it's so hard. It's so hard because, like, in face-to-face teaching, you can show somebody the technique and then you can walk around and critique and keep them up to date. But if you're on the Zoom session, you have to do it yourself.
Like, mine's not even Zoom. Like, they're on Facebook Live, so I can't see anybody. I just see myself. So majority of the time, I'm just chatting shit to myself. And then, like, there's no equipment, so it was more for just body weight exercises. But like, to be honest, I feel like it's probably taught me you can do a hell of a lot with just your body weights, and it's no joke, like, at times, which is good as well, I suppose. Like,
you said that, George, in the last lockdown about how, and Jack actually, about how much it makes you think outside the box and be like, right, how do I adjust the program to make it more intense?
Somebody's got one dumbbell and one band, and they're like, I want to put on 20 kilo of muscle, and you're like, how long?
How long?
I'm not Jesus.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, George,
with your coaching cues, how you've had to make up different things, like, because just one-on-one, I've had to think of different coaching cues when you can't just be like, no, go in this position. But then, especially when you can't see anyone in a class, if you had to think of lots of different ways to explain certain exercises.
You have to kind of cover all bases, because you really have to break everything down as well. I feel like you can't just be like, no, if you're just doing a squat, normally it'd be like a couple of cues and then you watch them and you change as you go. But if you're like, can't see anybody, you have to tell them, do this, and then try and add it together.
Yeah. Sometimes in the break, I go into detail about one exercise, and then in the next break, I go into detail about a different exercise that we're doing in the same circuit. It's just offering a regression and a progression, not knowing where
everybody's at.
Everyone's at, yeah.
It's hard. What's the hardest exercise they teach online?
Ooh,
We all know it. We all know it. So I just want to see if you're there.
How does they teach online?
Without being face to face with somebody. And
I'm doing bodyweight stuff like so.
I suppose actually.
Well, weighted, I would say probably like an RDL maybe.
Oh, there he goes. He's one of us. He's one of us, boys.
Nice. That's a bitch. Like even in person, that's a bitch.
Just the people start. You know what the weirdest thing is when you get somebody and they're here and you're trying to be like, right, push your hips back, and then they do this.
They turn out squat.
And you're like, no. You push back, and they're like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's so hard to be like, right, nearly got it, but
there was one guy, and I won't name him because we know him, and I think he watches this, where he literally didn't even bend his legs or hinge his hips. He just kind of went and like just pushed his head further and further forward, and then came back up, and then he'd look at me and go, "Is that right?" And I go, "No." Start again.
Yeah, you have to, and it's really hard to snap out of that. Like,
what would you do what is your main coaching tip with an RDL?
Get close to a wall, take about a foot step away from a wall, soften the knees and push your hips and they touch the wall. Because if you start bending your knees, your hips don't touch the wall.
Yeah.
Because if you just push your bum back, it will naturally bring your upper body down without you moving your spine. If you just think ass back. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's my
I say ass back and ass up as well. So push your ass back and push your ass, point it to the ceiling at the same time. That helps. Have you ever got anyone to stand in front of a bench with the
knees
just a little bit in front of it, and if the knee hits the bench, they're squatting, and if it doesn't, then...
No, I've not personally used it. I normally pretend I'm not teaching the RDL, but I am, because I'll just use a raised kettlebell deadlift. So the position they're in is an RDL, the bottom position of their RDL. Yeah. And then get that and then be like, you're doing this. And then when I go, okay, we're going to do the RDL, set them up in that position, be like, stand up.
Yeah.
Return, it's like, you're doing it. Take the step.
Matt, you see how sneaky the English are?
I know. Just disguise an RDL in there. They do
Here, try this new exercise. Oh, by the way, that's an RDL.
Yeah. They're shifty, Jack. Honestly, mate.
That's a good technique though, because it's easy to get somebody to do a deadlift, isn't it? And then you can set them up and be like, right, bum up a little bit, and then you can get them in that perfect sort of, can you feel your hamstrings, and then go.
Yeah, exactly. I think it just takes out, because with the RDL, you can use so many cues, especially if they're getting it wrong. You can be like, try this, and then you're like, okay, I'll use a different cue, and then they're like, right. So if you take all that away, just do this, stand up. Sometimes it simplifies it to get what you want.
Yeah.
Have you ever used the broomstick on the back to keep the spine straight?
Never used it, but I've seen a lot about it.
I use it just because if you're locked in and you're like, right, your head, your upper back, and your tailbone have to stay on this with a gap in your neck and a gap in your lower back, then once they come away from it, they feel it.
Yeah.
So it teaches neutral spine, and they've got feedback immediately. So without you having to be like, chest up, arch your back, it's just they're kind of like, they might worm their way down, but they, after a couple of reps, they groove the pattern.
I feel that people struggle. Most would be like, if they're starting and they're really not getting it, would be like, I put a band around their waist sometimes and stand behind them and just hold them.
Drive.
And then after they get it, I take the band away and just think, imagine I'm still there. And that sometimes helps. Like,
that teaches
well.
Another thing I've been getting people to do recently is, I find with their arms are down in a traditional position, there's a tendency to reach. With the arms. So I've been getting people to do more like a kind of adapted good morning, I guess, without any weight, just the arms up here. And my cue is to keep your thumbs in line with your ears. So they're forced to keep the chest elevated, and that just almost forces the hinge because it prevents the curvature of the spine. These are some great RDL tips, guys, by the way.
How do you find with people, because one of the things that people struggle with is they put their lower back in extension. So that's why sometimes the stick is good, because then you avoid that. But without the stick, sometimes people will do the hinge, but then their lower back is like
banana.
arch like that, and they feel like they're doing it because you're going to feel your hamstrings, but your ribs aren't on top of your pelvis. So how do you find with people that kind of going overhead and stopping that?
I've got to be honest with you, Jack, mate. The people who I generally see tend to be desk-bound workers and don't have that problem in extension.
It's the opposite.
So I haven't come across that at all. I don't think.
Even if they go there, do their ribs not come away from being?
No, because typically I tell them to get their hands here, and that's a struggle.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. So they can't quite get that extension. And but what I would do in that situation is probably get the stick.
Yeah, and beat them with it,
and just get them to push pressure into my hands at the stick. I'm trying my hardest not to say the stick was a good idea because Simon brought it up. But, thanks for that.
Phil Lerny, when I did his little it was like a fat loss course or something in London, he had a different technique altogether, which is like just body weight tension. So he had you cross your arms here and drive them up to your face, so it immediately stops the drop on the chest. And then he would get your feet under your hips, and then he would get you to try and screw your heels together. So you do external rotation of the hips, so your glutes are on.
Yeah.
And then he would chest up, screw the hips, and try and sit back while keeping the tension on the floor of your feet. And that was like, he didn't just do like 10 reps and that, and everybody was like, oh, Jesus.
One last thing on the RDL. Like with a dumbbell, how far would you say, do you go to the knees or do you go past the knees? Do you ever see people do them? I don't know. I don't even know if it is an RDL, but they might stand on like a step, and then they're going past their feet and their backs whack, and you're
like a Jefferson curl or whatever it's
called. I hate the Jefferson curl.
That's
just a recipe for explosion. And more for to use that tendency, the Jefferson thing for a hamstring. Or sorry, like it's more of a stretch, did he not, Jack?
Their mobility, wouldn't it be?
Thoracic mobilization more than anything else, I think.
Yeah, I don't like. It depends on the person you're using with. If the person's super trained and they're able to handle it, obviously you wouldn't chuck them with like 30s in each hand and then get them do it. But
why?
Sometimes it could be appropriate because it's when I think the way I would use it is this person's super trained, they're able to do the movement and cope with it, exactly. But then I think for those times where, how often, like we say all the time, pick things up properly, but if you drop like a piece of onion that you've dropped on the floor, when you just bend down, pick it up, you don't execute a perfect deadlift position to pick it up.
You don't sit there, set your feet chest up, hips back.
Every time I screw my glutes, I feel my glutes and then I go down.
Pop your shoulder blades down, brace your core.
It is true. But who do you call him? Stuart McGill said that as well. He was like, if you're a strong enough person and you've got muscular balance through your body, then you should be able to handle flexion. It's only
it's not that the back shouldn't move. Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at all the tests that Stuart McGill did, it's only when the spine is in full flexion that it under load that it starts to create a problem.
Yeah.
The tolerance for the back is actually really high. So like you said, if you're a trained person who can, it should be fine. It's just we get people to avoid it, don't we, Simon?
Yeah.
Who come and see us with their back health if that's their trigger.
Most people just tend to move directly from their back when they pick anything up when we're trying to teach proper mechanics. So the more they stay away from that, then when they go to do a flexion exercise, they're more resilient and less likely to injure themselves.
Well, you look at like the difference even in a deadlift with like a power lifter who normally their technique is just flawless, and then you may have a strong man and their technique might not be as good, but they are both different. Like they have been doing it for so many years that they might, an average person might be at an increased risk of injury, but they've been
seem to get away with it.
They do, just for like, especially when some of them maybe get it to their knees and then they hinge it up, like they proper just yank it. But
but it's like a sneak squat, isn't it? It's like a up and lean
but
back.
It works. And then just stand up with it down there, almost
crazy, absolutely crazy. Well, that's top tips for RDLs. Anybody who wants to learn how to hip hinge.
That was a long time on RDLs. That was good.
Yeah, but it's a good exercise though. And the thing with the RDL is, when I'm trying to stress it to people, is that it applies to so many things. Reverse flies, bent over rows. When you're doing anything, when you're in a leant forward position, you've got to have the ability to get yourself into that neutral spine. Otherwise, again, you're limiting your exercise with that person then, and I mean, you're stuck to everything on a bench.
Yeah.
One last thing on that though, you ever get it when you ask somebody to arch their back and they round it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the opposite. I'm like, no, an arch, but actually an arch is a rounded. You know, if you look at an arch,
you drive under an arch, don't you?
Yeah.
True.
But in our terms, it's the opposite.
True. I thought about that.
Yeah, I know.
Hollow your back then. We'd say hollow your. You should say hollow your back then, right?
I'm not changing.
No.
It's too.
I'm by your roots.
Yeah, that's what I'm sticking with. So I'm going to open up with some questions here now. We got over with that. So first thing I want to ask Matt, because like I said, I see all those online clients. You get some good results, man. Some really good stuff.
Thanks.
Especially you get some like novice trainers coming in there and they put on clearly some good muscle, and you get a lot of fat loss in there. So what would you say are the struggles you face, the main struggles you face when you get a new client come through the doors in the early stages there training? Could be training, could be nutrition, whatever.
It can vary. Like it really depends on the person and their training history, or if they're just completely newbie. If they're a newbie, like, and somebody who's just literally maybe not done anything in their whole life and they're looking to lose a bit of weight or whatever, I feel it's important not to overwhelm them with too many stuff at the start. Like I always find training and exercising isn't ever really the problem. Everybody kind of just, especially when they're starting, their motivation's high, so they're like, that's not the issue. It's more than comes with the diet, and then kind of correcting the habits. And it's quite hard. I feel everything comes down to a habit, in the sense that if you're looking to break habits they've been doing for 30 years, you can't just expect someone just to change that right away. Like, you know what I mean?
No, definitely. I think that's what I don't know, I'm not speaking for everybody, but we all struggle with is just sometimes they can't handle the information, because you could break something down to somebody and they could walk away and be like, yeah, I get that. And then chat them a week later and they definitely haven't got that, because the questions are coming back to you. You're like,
that's just a thing that we all do. We've all been there, you know, when someone's telling you something and you're like, yeah, I know exactly what's happening. You don't have a clue, and you walk away and you're like, what the fuck was that? You know what I mean? So literally. It's just because we're like passionate about the whole fitness side of things. We're like, why are you not listening? You know, but if we don't really care for something and somebody's telling you, then you kind of just be like, I understand, and you're hoping that they don't ask you ever again. You know what I mean?
That'd be the dream, wouldn't it? Imagine that just right here, guys. This is what you do now for the next 5 weeks, nutrition wise.
And like, you don't get infections.
5 weeks later, did you do it? Every step of the way, you'd be like this.
I know, it's a dream.
It's a dream. What about you, George? With new clients, what's the struggles you face with them?
I find that it's usually nutrition that people find the hard. People are happy at that point when their motivation is super high. It's usually super high for training, and they're real happy to come in and train. They don't miss any sessions. They're much more inclined to listen if I tell them to move up their output. But it's the stuff that we can't see, the stuff at home, where I'm trying to get them to stick to some sort of agreement that them and I have made. And like you said, and after we measure them 3 weeks later, when we're monitoring the results, and very little, if very little has changed, it's then that it comes out that they struggled with. And I don't know whether it's because, like you guys were saying, they didn't understand why we were doing it, or whether just that habit that they've had their whole life is just incredibly difficult to change. Because I've also found that people who I've trained for years, the kind of the penny drops with regards to how important nutrition is 6 months, a year down the line, and all of a sudden they start making changes themselves, and you think, you know, I think to myself sometimes, did I influence that? Of course I influenced it, but it didn't feel like I influenced it, because, you know, you can lead them down the path with all the information, but again, at the end of the day, it's them that get their own results and them that do it all. So all I think at that point is, well, hopefully everything I've told them over the last 6 months or however long it is has helped. then make the decision themselves, and then they start to make the changes. So I think I find I end up becoming more of an influencer, non-social media style, than anything else. Of course, there's some people who are bang on it, but I think most of the time, almost every time, the nutrition is a much slower burn for me, with the clients that I've seen anyway.
Yeah, you're just a guider, really, like, aren't you?
Oh,
yeah, absolutely.
You feel like sometimes you're repeating yourself, when somebody comes back, I'm just not seeing these results, and I didn't really follow that up and stuff. And you're like, they're like, so, what could we do different? You're like, you remember all that stuff I told you at the start?
But it's great when somebody comes back and actually, if they're with you a while and they are starting to learn things on their own, and then they come back and challenge you on something. Or I find that great. Like, that's a great sign for me. As somebody like, why are we doing this? Or why did you do that? And then you're like, happy days. Like, my job's done here. Do you know what I mean?
What about you, Jack, and that whole front?
No, it would be nutrition as well. And the worst phrase you hear is, I know what I need to do.
Yeah.
You don't
know.
Why are you here? Why are you with me?
Yeah, exactly. If you did, you wouldn't be here. So you don't. And it's exactly what George said. You just got to plug away. And people listen when they want to listen. Some people listen like that. They're like, I need to change. You know what I need to do. Let's do this. Other people, you talk to them and you're like, well, do you know how many calories you're taking in over a day, a week? And they're like, no, not really. You're like, thought about working that out? No, it's all right. I know what I need to do. I just need to cut out this, cut out this. And you're like, okay, I'll save it for today, and then I'll come back in 2 days' time when I see you.
I think it's like a genuine why are they with you anyway? I think some people genuinely just like being at a PT just to say that they're with a PT.
Essentially.
And then others are there to literally change their life. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but even I agree. I think even the guys sometimes who just like the idea of having a PT, the penny drops with them as well at some point.
Yeah.
But again, it could be 2 years down the line.
Right. How long is it going to take?
It's all on. And when the motivation hits them, there's often a trigger. Yeah. Whatever that it might be, that they haven't seen a mate for a while. Or their mum usually. Their mum might say, you're looking a bit, and then that is a trigger. On this point, I want to fire a question at you guys.
Yeah.
Within nutrition, with the clients that you see, what do you see something that's that typically people find hard to leave alone? That could be sweet stuff, it could be savory, could be alcohol, could be whatever. What do you guys see with your clients that they find the most difficult to
The majority of mine are Irish, so it's typically
alcohol.
Drink is the killer, because it's a 1 a week thing, easily, sometimes 2. So that's always a killer. It's not even the drink, I don't think, is the killer. It's the food, and then the day after is completely ruined. That's the killer. If you can drink and then you can do whatever you're meant to do the next day, then happy days. I know I can't.
The problem is, though, Matt, where we come from, a takeaway is the cheapest thing in the world.
Takeaway in bars is literally all since Instagram,
and it's literally they create special dishes out there. So it's the kind of place that it's so local that if somebody has an idea about a food, they'll make it for you in there, and then if they keep ordering, they'll just make it a dish. So
it's just on the menu. I know
you can just have mental concoctions of food. They're just the most ridiculous portion sizes.
£3
for £3.
Chicken box.
Chicken box.
Class.
What about you, Jack?
It would be alcohol. Exactly the same way. Maybe not to the extent with our client base where it's maybe nothing during the week and then a seriously heavy weekend that kind of just makes up for the rest of the week, but it's those 2 or 3 glasses every night, or client dinners. And I think for some reason there's a point, whether it's a generation thing like we kind of spoke about last week or weeks before, where it's kind of like they're viewing as separate things. So you have your food, and then people don't think about that alcohol has the calories in it that can tip them over. So they're like, no, I've been good with my food. And it's like, well, how many drinks did you have last night? I had like a couple bottles of wine and the other thing.
Just 1,200 calories gone.
5 days gone. Yeah, like it ruined it. So it's definitely that. It's just the knowledge around it, and the weird where it's separated in their mind.
It's the habitual thing though, isn't it? It's like we talked about before. It's the thing that people are like, yeah, but I really enjoy it. And I'm like, I enjoy ice cream. I enjoy sweets. I enjoy takeaway. I enjoy all these things, but just because I enjoy them doesn't mean they don't count. You know what I mean?
Comes down to discipline then, really, doesn't it?
We used to have we had a client years ago. George might know him. He was a Dave client, so he was his main client, and he wouldn't really want to train me over people, but he tried to say that alcohol wasn't his problem. He drinks every day. And he's like, yeah, but alcohol is not the issue. Like, that's not the problem. I was like, he's like, I used to drink way more in my 20s. And I was like, I doubt it. And he's like, well, no, I did. I was a big drinker. And I was like, yeah, but I think what you fail to understand is when you're younger, you don't drink every day. Don't care what age you, like up until at least 25, you don't drink every day. So it's a weekend thing. And you might binge, but it stops all the week. It's only then when you get older, the consistency of alcohol for 365 days of the year versus 52 weekends.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's the problem. And people just, because they love alcohol so much and the feeling they get for it and the relaxation that they associate with it, they just do not want to part ways with that.
It's a whole other ball game though. It's addiction then.
That's it. It's an addiction-free association though as well, because like you're like, oh, I can't chill out until I have my wine. You see,
I can't sleep until I have a wine.
I find that.
We spoke about, I can't, weeks blur into one. Was it last week where we spoke about how generation currently may be helping the one above because this generation knows about the benefits of strength compared to last.
That was last.
Yeah.
But I don't know many friends that on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday will sit down and have a couple glasses of wine. After dinner. It's like, I don't know, it's not a thing. I've never done it. It's never been like, oh, I need a drink after that day. It's like, no, it doesn't even cross my mind.
I think people are smoking less as well now.
Yeah.
I think people they might be vaping more, but so I think that hopefully you're right, Jack, that might.
Yeah, it's just that habit and tradition kind of, I don't know. I might be just my friends and stuff.
Also, like you put children in it, and then people are like, "Oh, I hated them all day." Like, I need to take the sting out of my mind from that memory. So I'm just going to
numb their head.
Yeah, I'm going to numb my whole body.
As a father, it's best to just ignore your children all the time.
Yeah, I think that's the best parenting technique ever. Because
it's actually a really good technique.
Yeah,
they're screaming, and then you ignore them, and they're like, ah.
Then they know you don't care. Like when a kid falls and then they look up to see like if anybody's looking, and then if nobody's looking, they'll just get back on their bike and cycle on. But if they look up and everybody's like, "Oh, are you okay?" and then they just bust out crying because it's a thing. Like that is, I don't care. I
want to try the other extreme. Instead of being like worried and like, "Oh, are you okay?" I want to just laugh at them and just be like, "How do they react at me laughing directly at them if they fall over and hurt themselves?"
Or you start crying.
Yeah, they're crying. You're like, oh, it's brilliant, man. It is. It's so funny, but it's hard to break tradition. Those things then where people are like, nah, that definitely doesn't affect me with alcohol. It's not. I don't think that makes you gain weight. And you're like, how? Would you drink Fanta all day?
Like everybody's parents would have went to like the pub was just a place you went, just this thing you just done back 20, 30 years ago. Like, and now it's during the week, you might go to very, very odd day if there's like something on, like a Champions League final or something, or like today's Paddy's Day, if the bar's open, they'll be jammed, like, even though it's a Wednesday.
National Irish Day, boys.
I think the thing is, it goes back to what Jack was saying about the a little bit everyday thing, where the people have half a glass of wine every single day, and they try and I think they think that they do, and then in the weekend,
2 bottles,
everyone has more than half a glass. So it's
it's like Friday, they're like, oh, I don't have to get up tomorrow, I should have a drink tonight. You're like, well, you've been drinking all week, but there's nothing different now. They're just
I'm gonna have 4 more drinks usual.
Yeah, it's mad though. It is mad, but that's one of the hard parts. That's a psychological thing, and trying to get somebody to understand that. And I think when they do, I mean, we probably all had clients when they actually finally get, I was going to say this before when you were talking about nutrition, then the hardest thing for a client at the start. But if the clients listen to us at the start and follow the advice about trying to reduce their calories and yada, 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 the buy-in would happen like that, because you would get the results immediately. And you all know that when you get the result, when you ask them then to do something more, they're like, you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do exactly what this guy said, because I just lost 4 pounds last week and I hadn't done that before. So that's where, if they listen to this and put aside their traditional and their habitual things, and just for a small period, 2 weeks, small period of time, 2 weeks, you would see big results, and then it would click, because it does happen eventually down that road.
Yeah.
You notice, I had a couple of clients that you could talk to them about nutrition and they listen, but they don't go and implement anything you ever say. And then I think there's kind of goes back to what Georgie was saying, where they don't see the benefit of the nutrition side, maybe because they're of a generation that has the habit, like we spoke before, where they think it's all done in the gym. They think that's where I'm going to lose my weight. It's nothing to do with outside. But I don't know if you had the same, where pubs were shut. So especially here, after work, going to the pub, like the streets bound, like the gym where we are, normally pretty rammed, even at lunch. And that not being there, they had that, like, especially that November one, where it's like 4 weeks.
Yeah.
They couldn't go have that drink. So they drank less, and they came back and they're like, yeah, I've lost loads of weight. And it's like, and they're like, I know what I need to do now. It's like, I just drink less, and then it was fine. And I was like, yeah, no shit. I've been telling you that back in a year.
Yeah, it's like I've not said this.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a funny thing, right? I had a client who was having their kitchen done, right? And no word of a lie, she comes in about a month later and she's lost loads of weight. And I was like, oh, have you changed anything? Very similar to what you... And she's like, oh, yeah, I think. She literally stopped having cups of tea because they couldn't make one because of the kitchen. Obviously, the milk, and I don't think she had sugar in tea, so it was just the milk. So I think she just had enough cups of tea in a day.
Would you have like biscuits with it and stuff?
It's 50 calories. It's 50 calories a drink, man. If you have 10 cups of coffee a day.
I think it was roughly around the lines of 7 to 8 cups of tea a day.
Yeah. With milk.
That's like 300 calories with the milk.
Yeah. I just don't drink tea though, because then you just do as Zach was saying about the biscuits coming late then. So I just don't drink tea. So then you just can't drink tea like by itself. It's just
name your biscuit. You got to name your biscuit now.
Bourbon creams all the way.
Nice.
Not bad. Have you ever dipped any rich tea in tea?
Yeah.
How many seconds do you dip it for now?
Just quickly.
Not long, because it's a weak ass biscuit. It will just
boom, boom, in.
3.5 seconds.
I count my seconds. I always start off with the first one. I go 1, 2, taste it. There's a bit of it's still a bit hard in the middle. Like I go 1, 2, 3. And
then you find out for like 7.
You've done the penguin thing, right?
Yeah. Bite the top and the bottom and suck it through.
Unbelievable.
Breakaway is the best. Breakaway is the best.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
And it's actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think breakaways don't have any calories in them. Yeah, because that's when I eat the whole pack. Yeah, that's the crack.
Talking about calories, the chip shop in Twerton used to batter your Mars bars.
Oh, unbelievable. Used to have them every day after school. When Mum with Chippy used to do it. Carol just used to do it for us boys for nothing. Like he used to buy the Mars bar. Then we tried it one day. It was absolutely class.
It doesn't sound like it's going to be nice, but it's incredible, isn't it?
It's a Scottish thing, though, isn't it? That's
unbelievable. So you can get battered ice cream.
And bananas as well.
Yeah, you literally get a scoop of ice cream, cover it in a batter, and you just smash it in a hot fryer and take it out. So it just coats the outside in batter, but it's not in there long enough. They melt the ice cream.
Okay.
Ice cream doesn't actually touch it.
Okay, I'm going to have to try that.
Going on, we're going to move on here. So just because Matt got a few questions here as well about it, and somebody asked you, what do you do when your motivation's really low with training? How do you keep motivated? What would you say to somebody who's struggling with a motivation to keep training and keep dieting possibly and just staying on track?
Like it's as cliche as it sounds, like the why is so important. Why you do anything really. But for me, always for me to be motivated, I don't use motivation as a way, because like to be honest, 9 times out of 10, I'm not motivated to do anything. It just comes down to a habit. And then it's more for my head, like my mental health is my priority. And the physical side, it comes with it. So that kind of pushes me on, like always just to keep a clear head. Because if I don't train for a couple of days, might get into like bad form and you just feel like snappy and you just want to punch somebody and then you just, you know what I mean? You just want to get away.
You've been living in Durham too long, mate.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just the way it is. I don't know. It's just, that's what motivates me anyway, is always my mental health, like, and pushing that on, which I preach a lot about too, like.
I've seen a lot recently there on the socials as well saying about that, especially since things are being highlighted so much now because of COVID. There's less people they rely on. There's less social events, so the people who are inside their own head.
Right, there's less people to talk to physically. Like you might not see anybody, like unless you live with them. Like, do you see anyone?
Nah, no, that's it. But we said about the why before, didn't we? Because that just does put it into perspective. Like, why did you even, like, sometimes I have to say it to the clients, you know, and they're like, oh, I don't know what's going on. I'm just like, why are you here? Why are you paying me money?
Like, sometimes it might be a real serious one. Like, it's like some people really might, it sounds a bit much, but they literally say, like, I want to see my kids grow up, or something really extreme, and then if they start to lose a bit of motivation, you just go back to them and just say, listen, read that again, and then come back and tell me about motivation. So that's mainly what I would push somebody on towards, is always reinforce the why they're doing it anyway.
Definitely. What about you guys? What about Jack?
Would it be that was a brilliant answer. That was one of the key things. But then also to refer back to numbers that they probably they forget about. People like numbers. We like stats. However, we use them. That's why fitness gadgets are so popular now, even though you have all these things that people probably don't use half the information on them. But things like, well, 6 weeks ago, you couldn't do a push-up. Now we're doing push-ups. 6 weeks ago, you couldn't do a goblet squat with 2.5 kilograms. Now you're doing so-and-so. Referring back to those things, I think.
Client ones is really good.
Yeah, because it's like, well, and then it's like, well, how many steps are you doing a day now? How do you feel every day now? It's like, actually, I feel way better. I feel stronger. I feel stronger in my legs. I feel better. I feel more upright and things like that. Just those little things, I think.
Kind of reinforcing they should be proud of themselves then, I always feel then. And then that they should be like, you know what, I should be proud of myself. And you're like, you're fucking right, you should. You know what I mean? Keep doing what you're doing. And
it's just, that's why it's important to, even if you're not with a personal trainer, to record what you actually do in the gym. We've said before how it's one of the big things that people miss out when they train on their own. They might just like do the same things over and over again. But if you have that, you can go back in your little book 4 weeks and be like, oh yeah, sure.
Like running as well is a big one.
This way, that's amazing. That's good.
Yeah, like if they do a run for the first time and they might try and run like a kilometer and they can't, and then you ask them how did it feel, and they say like absolutely, like I couldn't breathe and I felt so bad. And then maybe 2-3 months down the line, you're like, now you're running a 5K, and you're like, you know, like just go back to your notes from that 1K run and then tell me again about motivation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. What about you?
Very, very similar as well to what both you said. I was speaking to someone just the other day actually, and he was struggling because he'd done really well. Lost a ton of weight over this last, not literally, over this last 12 months.
A whole ton.
And a whole ton. But he's fallen off since February. But when I say fallen off, not to the extent that what he used to do, where he was eating loads and loads of calories in a day, which is why his weight gain happened. And actually, he didn't gain any weight. He just maybe make some, bad choices here and there. Well, I shouldn't say bad choices, different choices here and there that he felt didn't align with what he was trying to do. And he maybe gained a couple of pounds. And I said to him, if I'd have told you a year ago that on the weeks where you're less motivated, you weigh this much still, I was like, what would you have done then? He said, I would have snapped your arm off. So yeah, reinforcement is really important. I think if you don't monitor, whether it be what they're doing in the gym, whether it be what their weight was or their measurements or however it is you're monitoring progress. If that isn't done, it becomes much more difficult to have that conversation in the down weeks. So preempt that. You as coaches, I think we all know that there's ourselves and our clients are going to have moments of down for whatever reason they might.
It's hard. It's tough. It's like losing.
You've got to preempt those. And I talk to people often about perceived effort as well. You know, your body doesn't understand that there's a 50 kilo dumbbell. It just understands how much effort you're putting in at that time. So some weeks you're going to be able to do a weight. Some weeks you're not. If you put a graph in front of that person over the last 6 months and they've been consistently training, the graph would do that. Right? We all know that it would consistently progress, but there might be dipped weeks and higher energy weeks. So I talk to people about their perceived effort. As long as you're putting the effort in, your body will understand. And once your motivation increases or your fatigue gets a bit better, you start sleeping better, you'll see the benefits of those sessions that feel really shit. That's how I talk to people as well in terms of how to keep them going. So just if anyone's listening and you don't have a coach, think about those points.
I always
I'm not plugging, Jack.
No, I enjoyed that you said if anyone's listening. I mean, pretty embarrassing if there's no one listening to us.
We just save this
minimum of 30 people.
That's the attitude we have. If anyone's listening,
if anybody at all, one person you may mad. I find on that, like, I always find that the best thing to do is just to lie to people.
Lie to people,
lie to them. I just tell them they're like half the size they are, and that's all amazing. Because then it's just great. Because then you can sell more sessions, and that's all it's about. I'm joking.
Sell them supplements at that point as well.
That's it. Supplements. Yeah. Oh. Well, you're struggling with motivation. Zinc. That's it. Zinc. Here, £50. There you go. But no, I've done stuff in the past where I've took people through their first workout with me. Where I've used all the same weights that we've written down, all the exercises are the same, the rest periods, everything being the same, and they've done it, and it felt like a warm up for an hour.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
you'll see.
Did you charge them for the session as well?
Oh, double. That's
wasting your time.
Wasting my time. Yeah. That's right there. This is boring for me, so give me extra time.
I've already done this with you.
Yeah, I don't tell them, just send it in an invoice. Then they're like, "Oh, wow, I must have done 10 sessions."
Is that how you make money? I pay people so I can train them.
What do you mean? I thought you were busy, man. It's not important. George is like, yeah, I've done 50 hours of work this week and I've got no money. Well, I have to pay for every session. It's amazing. But I'm going to carry on here. So one thing as well that was brought up in questions is should people worry about their macros? I know it's a bit of a random one, but should people worry about their macronutrients and intake at the start?
For me, I don't know what your views on it is, but if they know how to track and they understand what macros and stuff is, some people have no clue and really struggle to grasp it. So I wouldn't even go there at the start. Even just like meal timings for some people might literally, like some people, this is where the whole under eating thing comes into play when they say, "Oh, I'm definitely not eating enough calories," and you're like, "Well, you've been putting on weight for you are you're not under eating. That's not a thing, but it is because they're eating shit quality foods that don't make them feel full, and then that's where that whole under eating thing. But I would say for me, calories and protein is the main ones at the start, and then full on the rest. Normally is quite sufficient. Like you're not going to eat 120 grams of fat anyway. You know what I mean? Or like you're probably going to be pretty bang on anyway, even if you don't notice it, because it's just the way that it works. Like you'll probably eat around the percentages that you should be at anyway. So that's my
protein always the hardest, isn't it, as well, to get people.
And just on that, Simon, you're relating this question to fat loss, I'm assuming.
Yeah. The fat loss, not for muscle building, because usually people are looking to build muscle. They have a different mentality than everybody else. They're willing to eat more because they're not the weight they want to be.
Yeah.
In terms, yeah, the two, yeah, okay. And they're probably already fairly lean, I guess.
That's it. I always find people who are doing want to build muscle, they've already kind of attempted it and they're not too sure. They kind of dab their hand in there and they read about protein, they read about carbs and all that. Like, so we fat loss generally, you know, most people coming in our doors wouldn't know what protein, fats and carbs are. They generally wouldn't be able to distinguish what they are. And it's mind boggling if you don't. It seems like too much information sometimes.
100%.
So you would, if someone gaining muscle, I guess the question becomes different. You would look at the macros, like you boys, I suppose.
I reckon not, and again, not even necessarily. Protein's got to be really high. If they prefer to eat carbs, I'll give them more carbs. It's different if their training intensity is really high. You might want to fuel the session, so you can do some pre-workout meals or carbs or something. They just give them a boost when they're in there so they can go in and have the energy to perform that session. I think we even talked about it before for fat loss. Sometimes fueling somebody up before they do a session means that they can put more in the session, which they'll get more out of. And their overall mediator here is their calorie intake. Well, are they going to lose weight or not? It's not their insulin spike's going to make them fat, is it?
I think it's important though, and depends of what weight gain you're kind of after. There's a difference I feel in weight gain and muscle gain. Like some people that just want to maybe put on size and good size, like not just get big, just where you look super watery and you just don't look good. But then weight maybe for a different reason. Like some people just maybe for sport they just literally need to be heavier. So I don't know.
Yeah,
it's different. Depends.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Jack.
Yeah, I was gonna say, with the weight gain, one of my points is that it's not maybe necessarily going into detail on macros. You could, if that person was able to digest the information and use it, but it'd be more, you'd probably go into more detail on what to actually be eating to hit the calorie and protein targets you want. Because like you said, Matt, you could get people that do these dirty bulks, quote unquote, and then they feel like shit. They might be getting weight, but they come in, they're lethargic because they had pizza for breakfast or something stupid like that. And like, fine, you're gonna, if it's a means to an end, you just want to be this weight, fine, easy. But you end up, like you said, walking around probably looking pretty shit. You're just at this weight now. Yeah. But you haven't really kind of got the goal you want, which is probably to be more muscular, but then also with the aesthetic side, if you probably want to be muscular and slightly lean.
Yeah. I think sometimes. Sorry.
No, that was it. I was finishing.
I think sometimes as well, kind of frustrates me is when you know, especially women when they start, and you might ask like, "Do you have a goal weight?" And they'll just give you some random goal weight. Like they say they're 12 stone, and they say they want to be 8 stone, just for no reason other than
somebody they know or something.
Right, somebody like they just feel like that is just the weight they have to be at. But I always kind of think then, even if maybe somebody that doesn't have to lose a lot of weight, like maybe say 9.5 stone, which is every weight's fine. Like I kind of be saying, but why do you think you're going to feel better at that weight, or like do you think you're going to magically just happy days I'm at that weight now I'm just going to feel like on top of the world? But in reality, like it's not really. I think people need to get away from that. That weight thing. You know what I mean?
Because you hear somebody else's, like even with men, and be like, "Oh, what weight are you?" And they're like, "Oh, I'm 86 kilo," and they look great, and you're like, "Well, I'll get the 86 kilo. I'll look great." And you get the 86 kilo, and you look crap because you're fat. And this guy's 86 and 10% body fat and looks amazing.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of when you're like, "Oh, I want to own a Lamborghini," and you do the work to own that Lamborghini. You're like, "Sweet." Now what?
And then it wears off after like 2 months.
It didn't actually make me that happy. It made me happy about half an hour. Then I'm like, I look like a prick because I'm stuck in traffic.
If this breaks down, I won't be able to afford to fix it.
Yeah, so it's that. It's like a materialistic goal. It doesn't, like you say, it doesn't mean anything. Like, what happens when you get there? You've got to then. Now what do you do?
Like, where do you go down?
They have to have something else. Otherwise, well, I'll see you later then. Bye.
And then they come back to you in 2 months later when they're back to what they were.
Yeah, exactly.
We used to know Stephen Box, didn't we, George? And
we did,
Stephen Box looks, really good, really lean, really good condition. He does some physique stuff and competes. I don't know if he does any more, but like you look at him and then you'd be like, fucking hell, he's stacked in muscle, do you know what I mean? And then you ask him his weight and he's like, I'm 78 kilo. And you're like, what do you mean? And he's like, I'm 78 kilo. I'm like, how? How is that? But he's like 8% body fat.
Yeah.
And he looks great, and everybody's chasing this massive number, and he's just there, 78 kilo, keep lean. Try and build lean muscle mass. So I mean, a kilo gain over a year for me is great.
Yeah. Just being real.
And the aesthetic of being lean and muscular is way more impressive than the aesthetic of being muscly and overweight. Bodybuilders don't go into show at 350 pounds with 30% body fat. They go in at 280 pounds with 6% body fat. They're now ripped to death, and they look amazing. And the two people stood beside each other, you're more impressed by the lean person than you are the heavy person with the bulk.
Do you think they look at their weight? Do you think they pay attention to their weight?
Bodybuilders? I think so, because they're all in the stats, aren't they? So year on year, they're trying to improve their lean weight, aren't they? So they might want to gain 5 pounds in the next year and a half of lean mass. So when they get down to that 6% or lower body fat, they're more physically impressive then, or they've brought their shoulders up, or they brought their quads up, or whatever. That's the last piece of the puzzle.
Then again, bodybuilders are full of gear too, you know what I mean?
It's a different realm altogether.
Yeah.
You can't compare yourself unless you're pumping yourself full of gear, so.
Exactly. I just wonder if any of you guys, just before we go here, time's flying. Have you got any other questions you want to ask? Anything you've thought of, or even just anything you want to shout out?
No, I'm all good.
Good, Jack?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think it's been good. What about you, Matt?
No, I'm pretty good. Yeah, I don't think anything else to
well, I enjoyed it.
I do. The question that Jess sent in last week that we said we do every week for all guests, and I almost completely forgot because it was such a good question. George, I think you had left by this point.
I had.
So
I've listened to it.
Yeah. So I have a client send in a question last week for a guest, and it was such a good question. I figured let's keep it for every guest each week. Yeah, and as a coach, as a PT, who or what inspires you?
Do I go first, George?
Yeah, you go first, mate.
You're
the guest this week.
Who inspires me as a coach?
Yeah. It doesn't have to be a who; it can be a what as well. So, who or what inspires you?
In terms of work ethic, I would say my parents, like my dad, and you think back to years ago when you're grandfather, used to work 4 jobs, and then you think you're working hard, and I just be like, you know what? I'm working in a gym. It's nice and warm. You may be doing 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week, but you just need to buck it up, and you be like, so that inspires me that way. And then in terms of being a coach, I just genuinely do love helping people. Really, as cliche as it probably is, but and I love seeing changes in people physically and mentally, and then letting them go on their way. Kind of just letting them go like a bird, just let them fly. You know what I mean?
Go and talk about me. Go and talk about me positively.
Go, young one. Spread your wings. You know what I mean?
It's good though. It's good because it means that, in that answer, it actually means that you care about the people rather than just money. Do you know what I mean? And there's a lot of people out there who just care about money.
Money's money. It's just I don't know. Just you can have so much money. I feel like most of the time when you listen to so many millionaires and whatever else, if you keep working hard and doing that, and if that's your goal, then you'll get there. But you'll get there anyway. If you're comfortable, I don't think you should be really driving for money, because it's not going to bring you any actual internal happiness. Externally, yes, you buy things, you might be comfortable, whatever. But I don't know. I think I'm more inside things.
Well, I think if you focus on the people and the quality of your training, the money will follow anyway, because you care about exactly. You're passionate about the work you do. So
it'll come.
What about you, Georgie Porgy?
Well, I have to answer, do I? I was hoping you boys had forgotten. You know what I'm like with this sort of thing. I suppose my original inspiration was probably my martial arts coach, Mr. Tony Puma. I think he set a good. He was a top coach, and he set a good discipline line. Put me on a straight path. I think for training. So yeah, I think I'd say him. I think he listens to this as well. So yeah, he inspired me as a kid to actually stick to something, because as a kid I stuck to nothing.
Apart from
but
vandalism.
I think he's set some good foundations for me in terms of how I coach and how I treat the people around me, and because he used to always want the best for us. And I remember seeing him getting frustrated, not because if ever we lost, not because we lost, but because he felt we may have not put as much work in as we could have leading up to whatever the event was. So you could see that he cared, and I think that's what's inspired me as well, quite a lot within the industry.
Love it. I thought your coach was Mr. Miyagi, but I must have got that from somewhere else. I don't know. Cobra Kai. Well, I enjoyed this, lads. I enjoyed everything about it. I thought it was brilliant. I don't know where everybody's gone.
See, this is what happens when you don't have me hosting, Matt.
No, this is absolute.
I actually don't know where I am at.
Well, I can see you. Can you all see him?
Yeah,
I can see him.
I don't know how to get back into the chat. That's all. I just sideswiped. There we go. Look at that.
There we are. There we go.
Yeah, there we are. But no, I enjoyed it, boys. I think it went really well. Matt, once again, thanks very much for coming on and sharing some of your information.
It's great to get you on again as well if you're up for it, Matt.
Yeah, 100%. It was my pleasure. You broke my podcast virginity, so
there we go.
Here's the many more.
I get somebody's.
Yo.
But same time next week, lads. And like I said, we'll try and get Matt back on here on the podcast again. Some great information there, and we'll see you all again.
Thanks.
Thank you, boys. See you
later,
again.
lads.
Nice for you, Matt.
Yeah.